Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah, I had a scare there. My laptop wasn't loading up, but I'm okay now.
With a minute to spare.
Yeah, boy, that was way too long.
All right, here we are at 6 o'clock. So I would like to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Sustainability Committee of the City of Tarpon Springs on this Thursday, September 17th at 6 o'clock p.m. Can we please get a roll call?
Chairperson Larson,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Robinson,
Present.
Mr. Mandalou,
Present.
Mrs. Menino. I see her. Mrs. Gallagher. Okay, I know Mrs. Gallagher was going to try to join us without video, but I don't see her yet.
We do have a phone number that is on.
Okay, maybe that's her. And Mrs. Sanger.
Right here, thanks.
Very good. All right. So the first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of the August 20th meeting. So have we all had a chance to take a look at that? And there aren't any questions or concerns, and I would like to entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I did have a question. I had never received them to my knowledge. I looked back and tried to find the minutes, but I didn't see them in my emails.
Did you get the backup for tonight's call?
I did. I kind of looked down. I printed a few of the items for tonight, but I'm sorry if I missed the minutes.
I can pull them.
Was that
up.
attached?
They were one of the attachments. I can go ahead and pull it
Okay.
up if you would like to scan it, or
I don't think it's critical at this point, but I just was wondering whether I had missed something, but it was in that email. Okay.
Yep.
Or if the board would like, we could also bring it back to the next meeting. It's up to the board.
did everybody else receive the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then we can either wait, like was just suggested, or we can just go ahead and prove them this evening. I'll wait and hear a motion.
Well, since I'm the only one that didn't see them, go ahead.
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
Can we get a roll call, please?
I'm sorry, do you want it as a roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's just go ahead. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. So that moves us on to our second item on the agenda, and that is our presentation from Ms. Shannon Brewer, the municipal arborist. I want to thank you for being with us tonight, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us. So please take it away.
Thank you. I'm very happy to speak with you tonight. Next slide, please.
One moment. I'll need to take over and stop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Okay. I don't know if any of you know my background or not, but if you want to go to the next slide, I'm not someone who sits behind a desk. I have worked for the Parks Department for 10 years, hauling brush, taking care of hanging baskets downtown, adding perennial peanut to the trail, among other activities that kept me outdoors. Over a little bit of a year ago, I moved into the permitting side of the municipality, where I have really truly enjoyed the role of the municipal arborist. But the outdoors is still my happy place. Next slide. Tarpon Springs is a piece of paradise. We are all lucky to be a part of this community. Trees are just one piece of this puzzle. There are two ways to approach tree management: arboriculture, which is tree care of individual trees or small project-based groups of trees. And then there's urban forestry. The formal definition of urban forestry is the management of naturally occurring and planted trees in an urban area, publicly and privately owned, using both traditional practices and forestry treatments and a holistic, proactive approach. Tonight, I want to talk about Tarpon Springs, how it relates to urban forestry. Each limb of the tree that you see there is crucial to a sustainable forest. The most important part of this tree is the community values towards conservation. One of my favorite conservation quotes is, "In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand. We will understand only what we're taught." Next slide. Tarpon is doing a lot of things that are right. We participate in various programs to maintain and sustain our urban forest. If you're unaware of the Tree City USA program, you might see the flag or the signs down at Craig Park. It is a volunteer nationwide movement that provides the framework necessary for communities to manage and expand public trees. Since 2007, CTS achieved a Tree City USA status by meeting 4 core standards of sound urban forestry management practices while having a community tree protection ordinance and celebrating with an annual Arbor Day proclamation and tree giveaway. CTS spent over participation in this program is a minimum requirement that we spend $2 per resident on the management of the urban forest. City of Tarpon Springs in 2019 spent 3 times that amount. So I've been collecting documents and tracking certain aspects of the work being done throughout the year for this program, and it's made City of Tarpon Springs more aware of the condition of publicly managed trees. In 2019, for the first time ever, Tarpon was awarded the Growth Award for Education and Public Relations. It was due to a partnership that I joined with UF, IFAS, and Project Learning Tree. Together, we got Tarpon Springs Middle School to participate in an Arbor Day Foundation Tree Campus program for K-12. Our work was recognized as the first in the state to start. Also, very proud that in 2019, Project Learning Tree named City of Tarpon as Partner of the Year. The PLT program combines environmental education, service learning, and leadership opportunities for teachers of K through 12. Attendance in the workshop provides each teacher with a curriculum guide with activities to teach tree science in and out of the classroom. To date, over 100 educators have been provided guides due to City of Tarpon Springs sponsorship. Next slide, please. For proper management of the urban forest, an inventory must be taken. iTree, as you see here, is a cooperative effort of the USDA Forestry Service, Davy Tree experts, and several other organizations. One component is the canopy coverage assessment. I completed the first urban canopy assessment in 2018, then again in 2020. The system takes a chosen area, which is the shapefile of our city, and drops random points. Then I look to see if the point is on a tree, other vegetation, bare ground, impervious surface, or water. And I gave a little demonstration in the bottom right of those. If you see in the very bottom right, that's a swimming pool. I counted that as impervious surface, not water. There was an increase in coverage in 2020. What added to that change was the completion of large developments such as Bayshore Heights and the Mears Apartments. But I'm sure you're wondering, how do we stack up against other communities? Largo has 26% canopy coverage with 45% impervious surface. Tampa is 33% canopy, 35% impervious. Dunedin is 43% canopy and 27% impervious. Gainesville is 47% canopy and 24% impervious. Next slide. But what that canopy coverage does not tell us is the condition of our urban forest. We have limited biodiversity. When areas are planted with the same species, they become more susceptible to genetically specific diseases. More diversification is the easiest way to prevent an entire area from being devastated. Just like all carbon-based life forms, trees age. The mean life expectancy of a tree is 19 to 20 years within the urban setting. A sustainable system does allow for removal, so please keep that in mind when you start to talk about sustainability. Putting large species on small planting spaces can cause damage to infrastructure. We'll talk about that in a few later slides. After Hurricane Ivan, many homeowners became very afraid to live under old, large trees. The only way to conquer this fear is through education. Dr. Gilman from the University of Florida made a great series of educational manuals about hurricanes and trees. Please write down this website and check out the site. Also, increasing heat index. As you can see in my bottom right picture, I went out to Pinellas Avenue, or US 19, I'm sorry, and took a picture by the bus stop and used a heat gun. The shade of larger trees can help lower these temperatures. Shade trees with the right amount of soil for proper rooting can help alleviate this problem. But these are worldwide problems, not unique to Tarpon. Next slide. What does Tarpon need? It needs an urban forestry management plan as one part of a sustainable future. Next slide, please. How does a city get started to create a plan with this magnitude? If it's a goal of your committee, please watch both of these webinars. This series was to show what the city of Tampa, with the help of UF and others, learned about how to integrate social and biophysical science to develop a strategic urban forestry management plan and public policy to sustainably support multiple and diverse outcomes. Really, this is a living document, not something that's supposed to sit on a shelf. Their courage and insight helped to make the city of Tampa a world leader in urban tree canopy sustainability. Over 20 years of research went into making the city of Tampa urban forestry master plan, leading up to updated land development codes, which was codified May of 2020. I believe this framework can be adapted from Tampa to a smaller version with just as much positive impact for Tarpon. Again, I encourage you to watch and learn from these individuals. I have met with them and sit down with them through the Urban Forestry Working Group. You can learn how to overcome these issues that your committee is trying to solve and conquer. Next slide, please. It's common understanding the larger the tree, the more ecological benefit a tree can provide. These trees are more productive when they're in groups. The chart on the bottom left is an eco goods and services chart produced from the research the Tampa Bay watershed and the city of Tampa collaborated on during their 20-year endeavor. Discovering these relationships was really a driving force to change the paradigm of thought from arboriculture to urban forestry. In order to support a larger DBH, or diameter breast height, the industry standard on measuring trees, more soil volume is needed for proper rooting. In return, the tree has more capability for water storage and help with stormwater management. A community filled with smaller understory trees because of small planting beds does not have the most ecological benefit. It's a trade-off. There are many new and exciting structures that help provide increased soil availability to trees. Silvacells, structured vaults, engineered sidewalk. These methods get pricey, so in the end, it's up to the community to create a sustainable environment to support larger, healthier trees, which provide the most ROI. I've provided these charts and talked to project administration about starting to incorporate these new methods. The cemetery expansion has included root barriers and engineered ways to preserve those larger pines that you see. I'm excited to see how these trees respond over the next few years. Next slide. So all that information I just gave you about how to grow a large tree makes this matrix that you see here really important. There are some great documents out there already created, and this is one of them. We do not have to reinvent the process, but it does need to be relevant to Tarpon. This tree matrix is another product of the research from Tampa's urban forestry endeavor. The trees here have been painstakingly tested and categorized in hopes of putting the right tree in the right place. Even how much square footage and distance from surfaces like sidewalk, pavement, or a home have been quantified. Another one is Trees for Pinellas County by Miss Jane Morse, a former UF IFAS Extension Pinellas County agent. I prefer this matrix because the distance from structure information, while trees for Pinellas has many more native species not found in the Hillsborough document. As Mr. Rob Northrop, UF IFAS Extension, Hillsborough County states, urban forestry is an ongoing conversation between biophysical world and social values carried out in the language of ecological processes. It's hard to convert a conversation to start, necessary to have, but rewarding in the conservation from a land management aspect. As Tampa discovered, what truly allowed change was the social values which motivated the economic drivers to change the approach of conservation. Academia on its own, separately from practitioners and users of the urban forest working on the ecological problems today, is not a good way to go. Integration, collaboration with multiple people, multiple institutions ensures we are breaking through that complexity of ownership, location, use, time, and taking the ecosystem approach to urban forestry cannot be done alone. I firmly believe this committee is the right place to start this conversation. The current staff are the right people. Please take time to watch, research the ecosystem approach to urban forestry. Talk to each other afterwards, debate this worthy endeavor to pursue for Tarpon. Come up with questions as a group. I'll try to answer what's relevant to my skill set. I'll share it with other staff and send them to the team from Tampa if we have to. Then in time, we can circle back. This process is not quick. Every step needs collaboration. In the end, we are just one generation. Next slide, I'm sorry. We are just one generation away from what we could be. We are one generation from what we will become. We are only one generation from a tremendous place or a tree-less place. We are the leaders and the educators of that one generation that can make a difference. And that's one of my other favorite quotes of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that really informative presentation. That left me with a lot of questions and a lot of to-dos, I think. So I guess I'll hand it over to the rest of the committee right now to see if they have any questions.
Shannon, you mentioned the term engineering sidewalks. Could you talk a little bit more about that and kind of flesh that concept out for us?
So there are products out there and ways to create usable soil volume without the compaction that development has. And then also to be able to give enough space underneath that sidewalk so the roots that need to come to the surface for oxygen, because trees do need air in their root system and in that ground to provide them space for water and nutrient storage capacity. And I've noticed that there's a lot of sidewalks that have damage, and we all have seen it. Something like this may be one approach to providing a larger space.
Okay, boy, there's a lot of good information that you just threw out, and it'll take some time to digest it. But going back a couple of months when Renee Vincent talked to us, she said that she felt that the land development codes had a robust tree canopy plan, but she felt it needed upgrading. It needed, some work. And she specifically said she thought that some demonstration projects of how, well, let me back up and say that there is wording in the land development plan that says that specifically hardwoods and evergreens are preferred. And yet we've seen renovations of streets right in downtown Tarpon Springs in which palm trees were preferred by the Board of Commissioners, in spite of what the land development plan says. And Ms. Vincent's argument was, we probably need some demonstration projects to show that hardwoods, shade trees can be put along sidewalks and streets without being disruptive. What do you think about the concept of her concept or yours of development, of demonstration projects, excuse me?
We are very, very fortunate that the city of Safety Harbor actually just did a Silva Cell project on the new building downtown. in order to incorporate the oaks. So I did not go down there specifically and see it, but I do have conversations with Mr. Art Finn, who just recently retired from there. And we've talked about it extensively. So what they did is they have the Silva cells actually underneath the sidewalk, as well as the adjacent parking spaces. He took a lot of photos while this was being constructed. If you would like for me to reach out to him, I would be more than happy to.
Speaking for myself, I think that would be great. Curious to hear what the other members of this committee think. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation and a lot of food for thought.
Well, Shannon, thank you for your presentation. It's wonderful to hear your passion towards the work that you're doing, and it's only good for the city that you're doing. So I appreciate that deeply. I really also appreciate what you said about monospecies. I think that's something to keep a close eye on, and these subtle ways where we think we're replanting and doing well, but it's not quite. I would love to, I also agree with what Dr. Robinson said. I'd love to hear more about this and be able to keep this conversation going, even if it's snippets. If you hear something, or there's maybe a video that you could send to Irene or Paul and could send out to the committee so that we can educate ourselves as we go. When you come across something interesting, I would love to see that. And hopefully we can get a copy of your presentation so that I didn't write everything down, so that I can just look and check out those websites and webinars that you mentioned. So appreciate it. And I just love the direction that you're going. And it seems like the city of Tarpon's doing a really nice job with this. So thanks.
You talked about monoculture. There's a rule of thumb within urban forestry where you do 30, 20, 10. There are some variations where you get down to 5 and 10 at the other, but it's 30% family, 20% genus, and 10% species. So if we all keep that in mind as we review these things, and I'm trying to, and not just think of the project, but where is that project occurring? If we can look at the area around that project and make sure that we're not just adding more oaks to a nearby oak forest, or crepe myrtles to a crepe myrtle forest, that would go a long way.
Thank you. I noticed I did a tour at Whedon Island, and they said in our particular area there are little microcultures basically. So you can go. You may think pines are great, but the pine could not be part of a microculture that 50 yards away it would be appropriate for. So there's also these increments, and how the oak leaves are curved down so that their water is more accessible to them and to retain water during drought and things like that. Just fascinating. So when you say 30, 20, 10, would that be, could you give an example of that, like with a palm tree or a pine tree or something, to kind of, so I could help understand a little better?
So take the crepe myrtle. There's many different cultivars that are out there. So, but that all is still in the same genus and species. So just because there's a different cultivar does not mean that it's the same. It's different for the genus and the species. That would be one example. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think I get where you're going. Thank you.
Any other
Hi, Ms.
questions?
Brewer. I had a quick question about you mentioned an ecosystem approach to urban forestry. Does that kind of tie into the family genus species? Is that like 30% you want to have same family, or like kind of to have like a more diverse ecosystem where different things can benefit from the different trees? Is that kind of like where that's going?
It's more of, once you watch the webinars, I would like to more address that and circle back on that question. But really what they were really trying to push was the inclusion, the collaboration, and really what pushed forward on their ecosystem approach was getting the value of the community. what is the value, who values what, and what value do they have? You know, an HOA is going to have a different value than somebody that's on a street over by Boyer, and getting everyone involved. And then, like Ms. Sanger said, with the micro niche communities, and you'd really see it across Tarpon. The coast over by the Gulf is way different than over by Jasmine, and then everything in between with the way we have the bayous. So a full holistic looking at the city, you know, zooming out on Google Earth, not just street by street or block by block.
Mhm.
Really watch those webinars. It will really truly open your eyes. And I really do think that this committee is the place to start that conversation.
Thank you for your presentation. And I was hoping that we would be, just to reiterate what Robin said, that we would be able to get copies of the presentation so that we have the links to the webinars that were on there. And I really appreciated the great quote at the beginning. I'm a huge lover of trees and support 8 billion trees. It's a project, a worldwide project to help replace many that are being lost through improper agriculture right now. So it's exciting what you're doing here in our own city. I'm very excited that we could be involved more directly, but I would appreciate the education first. So thank you for forwarding the presentation.
I wanted to thank Shannon for presenting to us tonight. It's been a real pleasure working with her in preparation for the meeting, and I think we're real fortunate to have her skills on staff. I did look up her 30-20-10 rule, and those are maximums designed to enhance that diversification she was talking about. So no more than 30% of one species on a project or an area, et cetera. And then, you know, when you get down to the actual plant itself, you don't want any more than 10% of the same one. If I said that okay, Shannon. I also saw a lot of parallels with what she's coming up with in her presentation and what we're doing with sustainability, the collaboration, the fact that it's going to take some time. You're not going to fix, you know, long running problems overnight. And there are resources out there, just like we went out and looked at different sustainability plans. I think it sounds like we got some real good local examples for urban forestry plans. So I do look forward to reaching out with Shannon on more of that and reporting back to you, particularly the Safety Harbor project. We'll see what that looks like.
I've got a few questions that I wanted to wait and make sure that everybody else got a chance to ask theirs. I really very much appreciate you taking the time, Shannon, and like to echo what Robin said, you can hear your passion for your work, and that's a wonderful thing. So I guess my question is, besides looking at the resources that we need to do, and I would take it a step further, if you wouldn't mind, Shannon, giving us a list of like the links in order that would be helpful for us so that we don't miss something that's in the PowerPoint. So you're like top 5 things to look at, or that would be really helpful. And I think that it would be helpful to try to pass that list along to the Board of Commissioners as well, because I think that is always very good to go to the top too, and make sure that they're on being educated as long, you know, as we are as well. So that would be really helpful to me to have that list. But then also, if you could start to brainstorm a list of like, what are the like top 5 things that we could do as a committee, that like priorities, and because we're going to have to start to tackle this at some point sequentially. So I think that would be really helpful for me, at least in the way that I kind of process and think, like, tell us what to do. And
well, and I want to be a knowledgeable facilitator. I do not want to be this is what needs to be done individual. I want you to discover it, you to write down what you need, and I will be the knowledgeable facilitator.
Okay, I appreciate that. I have a question about when we do the tree giveaways, do we talk to people about right place, right type so that they aren't, is that all part of the education that goes with it?
Yes, and I love Touch a Truck. It's one of my favorite events because I get to meet the community. And a little quick sidebar, the people that come back make it worth it. So seeing each family that comes up and registers for the tree, I give them a planting instruction. I give them how to water the tree properly, because you just can't take it from a nursery setting and drop it in a yard and expect Mother Nature to take care of it. So that establishment period, I talk to them about it. And then also, if you have seen the signs that I put up for each one, I want them to make an informed decision. So I put the characteristics. Is it going to be 70 feet tall? Is it going to be 15 feet tall? Is their yard need salt tolerance? I talk to them about that. So on my sign, there's quite a bit of information so they can try to quickly make a decision. Some of them can't. But my table probably has one of the most covered pamphlet tables we have there. And then I have 2 ginormous boards that I also display. So it is a real education event. So come talk to me if you need to find me.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And then I also, is the city, I guess I'm just not totally understanding, are we creating kind of a master plan of where we would like to add more trees in certain areas? Is that part of what's happening?
I think that's what one part of one item of the master plan that needs to be discussed, but also how do you manage what you currently have? If you don't know what you have, you don't know how to manage it. And then also, you know, the cycles of pruning need to go into that. Cycles of, you know, development and how things change also will affect that master plan. But being able to think on the 20 or the 30-year distance for what the city of Tarpon Springs owns. And then when you go into the smaller side and the smaller year, those are usually called work plans. So, but they all need to be working together within that master plan. So there's many levels, as you will learn as you go through those webinars.
Very good.
Can I ask one more question quickly? I'm just curious, is there a percentage of canopy that is ideal in a city like ours?
And honestly, that goes back to the values of the community. As other places have higher, and you know, Gainesville being the highest, but they value those trees on that level for their preservation, for their master plan. I don't think there's a magic number we can pluck out of the air. We have to look at what we have on the ground in relationship to, you know, buildings and infrastructure and things like that. So
right.
There's a lot to that magic number.
I think what would be really helpful if there was some way to coordinate the canopy in direct relationship with keeping heat down, you know, in the areas where you have that canopy. So, man, I know that there's resources, but it seems to be desirable to go for as much as you can. Doesn't it seem? You know, to keep it cooler. I mean, I know that just from, you know, the streets that I walk around here or ride on my bike, it's substantially cooler when you go into the shade under the trees. So
well,
that'd be an overall benefit, you know, and they do create an environment too, and a climate.
So you've already identified value to you, walkability.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much for taking time after the end of the day. You've already worked a full day and taken time out to come help educate us and help to make our sustainability plan even better. So appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
And Ms. Larson?
Yeah.
We do have a raised hand that was raised during the presentation. I don't know if you would like the public to comment.
I think we probably should now, because it may be a question for Ms. Brewer that I don't know that any of us could answer if we do it later.
I can allow them in to talk then.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Shannon. Julie Wade. How are you tonight?
Wonderful, thank you.
When a developer comes in and develops a tree plan, who evaluates that as far as the city for a massive development?
So planning and zoning has a team that looks at it as well as I do.
There's a big development possibly coming called Enclote Harbor. And I did look at their plan and how many plants and trees they were putting in. There were no mangroves listed, and they are developing along the river. So who says you folks need to do that? Add that to your plan, things like that.
You're breaking up a bit. I will look into that.
Now I lost you.
Sorry. I will look into that.
Okay. And then who evaluates when they do this if permeable surfaces can be included? They've shown a water retention / runoff plan that's apparently viable, valid, approved, but there were no permeable surfaces, although they are adding a lot of concrete.
I have seen the permitting side, several departments look at all of the aspects of the plan through the routing system. So I'm sure multiple departments are looking at that.
Can we require them to add permeable surfaces?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I would have to defer that to supervisor planning and zoning or
P&Z.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Always good to hear from you.
Thank you.
All right, and that was the
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
It just came to me after Julie spoke, is that, she mentioned the mangroves, and the mangrove is our city tree. And I'm wondering if it would be possible to have, when we have the tree giveaways, would it be feasible to do mangrove seedlings for folks who live along the water, or is that difficult?
That depends on time of the year. And traditionally, we have had them in more February to March. It's gone back and forth over the years. I can start to try to request that, but that's only going to be for homes that are along the water.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that that gets the right tree in the right place. Again, we could look into that, especially for coastal homes.
Cool, thank you.
I have a follow-up to that then. Sorry, you're so close to getting home. Is there like a seasonality when tree giveaways would be better, more likely for the tree to survive? And should we be looking at that as a city instead of just because it's when Touch a Truck is? I mean,
there's been actually 2 giveaways. This year we didn't have one because of COVID-19, but before in the past, there was one on EcoFest. And then I was able to get larger, and that might actually be the best time to hand out the mangrove, because that was in the summer time frame, kind of just before school started. They tied the back to school bash. So maybe that might be the best time to give out the mangrove. But doing the 2 times when allowed and available, more trees in the urban forest, I'm all for it.
Very good. Okay. All right. Well, then, thank you so much again. And we will go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item number 3, a discussion, a follow-up of the last meeting, the presentation from the Public Works Department. I think there may have been a question or 2 that was asked.
I've got some information here. A few points that I took from the last meeting. One of them, Denise asked about the fate of recycled materials. And I did a little more following up with Tom, and Ashley did as well. And Ashley's got a little bit to say about how those recyclables are used or reused.
All right, a little technical difficulty there. All right, so yes, I did follow up with Tom as well. So he was letting me know that the items are generally taken, the recyclables are generally taken by Waste Management to the recycling center. They are separated, they're broken down into bundles, and they're sold on market. And then a percentage of those sales goes back to the city to purchase more recycled products.
One thing I also learned talking to Tom just recently, the county is reaching out to the communities to see about the feasibility, just talking, early talk here, about a county, a local recycling type of co-op where they would take the lead and do it at a more local level. So I think that's an exciting proposition. Of course, we'll have to see if the finances work out, but at least there are discussions going in that area.
Ashley, to follow up on what you just said, after the bundles are auctioned off and they end up in some kind of private company's hands, what happens to them? What percentage of them are actually recycled from that point forward?
That I can follow up with Tom on, and I can definitely get back to you guys.
If you could break that down as to type of material and where they end up, that would be most useful and most helpful.
Okay, will do.
And I have one more question. It was brought to my attention maybe a year ago that some of the local restaurants and businesses don't have any requirement to recycle at all. Is that something that you're aware of? I mean, I just didn't think of it, but it's a gigantic impact that a lot of stuff that could be, I mean, you know, whether it's local taverns, I know maybe this year it's not as bad as it is in some other years, but there are glass and aluminum that would be so easy to recycle 100%. It's not even about plastics, but there's no requirement. And is it kind of a touchy issue?
That I don't know. I can definitely follow up on that as well.
Like,
All these answers back to you guys. I'm not aware of the businesses not having to do that. So that's something I'll definitely follow up on.
mhm.
And my studio backed up to the alley that was a couple of businesses there. One of them was a restaurant, and when they'd get their deliveries, there would be the whole back corral there would be filled with cardboard boxes. I know cardboard is easily recyclable too, and that seemed like that would be, I think, a useful thing.
I'll add that to my list.
Well, to me, as a sustainability committee, that's, you know, super low hanging fruit. You know, if we could accomplish something like that, it's, you know, may seem like it might be an imposition, but it's really not when people are in the habit of doing it and employees get in the habit of doing it. I know we do that at my job. So, you know, it'd be nice to tackle that as a very easy way of making our city more sustainable.
Paul, I have a question. When you said that the county was looking to do the recycling more locally, does that mean that the county would be responsible for it and take it out of the hands of Waste Management that we have contracted with the city? Or I didn't understand that.
Yeah, what I understand is that they would look at building a facility to receive all the recyclables and come up with markets for those products, sort of a do-it-yourself instead of contracting it out. I don't know many more details than that, but that's just something Tom said, very recent development that he was contacted about interest, like what kind of interest. So he's understanding they're surveying communities to get a sense of where that could go.
Mhm.
Are they looking at businesses too, or is it just cities that they're surveying right now? Do you know?
Right now, I believe it's the different municipalities and local governments. But we can find out more about that and report back.
That would be great. And then I had a question about another follow-up. I don't know, it wasn't in this particular Public Works presentation. It was but it's a follow-up. So I'm going to ask it now. I think Ashley, you were going to look into the newsletter and being able to, that Karen Lemons puts out and us being able to engage with that. So I wasn't sure when to ask that question, but I guess I'll just ask it now if you could, since it's a follow-up to the last meeting.
So she was originally interested in allowing us to utilize that website to post that flyer or to post sustainability related material. So I can follow up with her and find out when the best time is to release that flyer, but you're talking about the same flyer that we're going to be sending out in utility bills, right?
I thought that the question or it was just, she had expressed, I guess, the ability for us to communicate with the community through her newsletter. And you were going to follow up and ask, I thought, what that entailed. If it was specifically for the flyer or if it's for other upcoming events to be able to communicate.
Okay. I will definitely follow up with her with that tomorrow, and I'll send you guys all an email. I apologize for that. That is something I will get done tomorrow for sure. But she was definitely on board with us being able to use the website for sustainability. So yeah, I'll follow up and get back to you guys.
Great, thank you. Were there any other comments or questions on follow-up from the Public Works presentation from last meeting?
No, but Doria, can I just ask on your comment with the newsletter? Would that be an opportunity for us to then put that education?
Karen, I'm going to interrupt you.
Piece in like
hear you.
every time the newsletter comes in with a like either did you know fact and put some education or how we're addressing certain things.
Karen, can you hear me,
would
Karen?
be something I don't know, Ashley, if that's where we wanted to go.
I think I heard my name, but Karen, I'm so sorry. I cannot understand you.
You're breaking up quite a bit.
I'm sorry, I'm working from a very different place than I've been working before. Does that help at all? Can you hear me?
Slightly better.
Is there a phone number that Karen can call in instead of being on the internet that we can send out, Mark?
Yes. Yes, let me try and get in touch with her.
Great. If you guys don't mind, we'll just wait a minute or two until he has a chance to try to connect because I would like to.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I lost connection. I'm sorry, I'm working from a really different remote spot than I was before. So my question was whether that newsletter provides an opportunity for us to continue that education, not specifically just with that flyer, but to extend that with additional, did you know, talking points with either a little bit of education, what we as a committee are looking for from the community or are proposing or moving forward on. Is that kind of the direction that we're thinking to go with that newsletter blurb? And are we able to do it with each newsletter that comes out?
That question was for me, Karen?
Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe the committee first, you know, like, is that kind of the direction that we're thinking, or how do we want to ask Ashley to propose being part of the newsletter?
I guess my thought was just to get a better understanding of what the offer is.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Nope, that's great.
Okay, any other questions about, or any other discussion about the follow-up from the last meeting?
I have one. I just remember this from when Mr. Function was presenting, when we talked about the Roundup, and he said that they're decreasing it, and then we asked if there was some type of a plan for decreasing. I I know that can't be like flipping a switch and going from one whole process to another, but I'm wondering if how we could support that decrease in that Roundup product in our city, or be, just to think about when will we be somewhere where we don't need that anymore, the glyphosate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty important. I mean, as far as a toxic substance, and when the parks folks are spraying, you don't know what it is. So I'm walking my dog, and it's like, should I walk on this? I'm sure, and I usually say, is this safe? And they say yes, but I don't know what it is. So I think that would be something that would be helpful to understand better.
I totally agree. And I almost feel like it has to be like flipping a switch. I mean, we've got so much catching up to do, and the last month has been just a horrible reality check. It's really hard for me to put on any happy face at all. I'm hopeful that we have a sustainability committee, but I have friends that are in Washington, Oregon, and California, including my sister. And I've been seeing pictures, and it's terrifying. And not that fire is a threat here, but I mean, we're a part of a globe and a global situation that requires exceptionally aggressive backpedaling from what we've been doing. So if there's any areas that we can try to quickly make progress, I'm 100% in agreement that we need to try to do it. And even if it's like a switch, that no more of this, because we know it's bad. I mean, I think about when I was a kid, and the Congress heard about the Silent Spring from Rachel Carson and realized that DDT was a problem, how quickly there was action. But there's so much corporate influence nowadays over government decisions. It's really hard for things to happen quickly. And I just talk to people all the time, and in conversation, I say, well, if the government doesn't do it, you can do what's right. If the government isn't ready to do what's right, do it yourself. I mean, I think we're at that point where we've all got to be doing what's right. We've got to be doing something for the effort. But yes, Robin, I 100% agree that we've got to find out what's being sprayed and be as environmentally friendly as we possibly can as a city. You don't want to have to walk your dog in a hazmat suit.
If I remember what Tom Function said last month, he said the alternative to using Roundup was to hand pull weeds. So if that is the only alternative, are we talking about a manpower issue, a budget issue versus a chemical issue? Is it more complicated than that, or is it really quite that simple? More people versus more chemicals, specifically directed at.
Yes, I don't think it's quite that extreme. There are products, natural products that are, or at least less harmful products that are available. They just don't work as well, unfortunately. But that's what you're talking about. You're talking about having to do more applications, more time. And so I think it's a combination of finding the right products and the right methods and possibly engineering these problems out. In other words, try to make things that don't require weeding as much, using mulch in places. And so I think it's, yeah, it's going to be a combination of solutions to get past that Roundup.
This is kind of comical, but in Seattle area, there was a guy that had a company called Rent a Goat. And he would take a crew of goats out to do certain jobs, like they were going after noxious weeds, for instance. And ducks do kind of the same thing in a garden. A lot of people do have ducks because they're real selective about eating certain weeds. I just think it's kind of a fun concept. I'm not sure that it would work in our setting, but you know, there are a lot of natural ways that weeds can be plucked other than by human power.
All right, so I think that that's definitely something that we need to address in the action plan when we're looking at materials being used. And thank you, Robin, for bringing that up again, because I agree it's very important conversation, and we need to remedy it, to your point, Denise, quickly. Okay, so moving on to our discussion, item number 4 of community engagement. We've got the final flyer draft, and Paul, I'm going to pull it up. I'll share my screen so that we can take a look at it. There we go. Did we all get a chance to take a look at it? Questions or comments?
We want to make one comment, and I didn't get it out to the group yet, but Karen found one little, not a typo, but it's redundant. So if you go down to the 3rd question mark, and you see we got, after 2100, we got sea level rise, the word rise twice. We don't really need that. So I took that first rise out. So it'll read 2100 sea level is predicted to rise.
I think I'm pretty happy with where we've landed with this, and I would support putting it out in the next billing cycle if we can.
So I did talk to utility billing about that. The next cycle would end up being, or actually the next day that we can get it out is going to end up being, if I can find it here, September 28th. If you guys are okay with that, then I can move forward with sending it over to Erin and having her disperse it on that day. And it actually will be dispersed in segments. I'm not exactly sure how many there will be, but I know it would be definitely going into October, but that schedule is not set yet. So I know at least the first disbursement would go out September 28th. And then once I get that final schedule for October, I can send that along to you guys.
Yeah, I'll add on to what Ashley's saying. The way they bill, it's in bill cycles. They call them cycles. I think there's over 10 of them. And it's based on how many meters the staff can cover in one day or week. So this effort, when we started on the 28th, if that's what we all agreed to do, will probably take about 4 to 6 weeks to get fully into all the bills. But I think that's a reasonable amount of time.
All right. Any other questions or comments about that? Are we all pretty good with that? All right. We've got a green light. The next item is the update on the city's RFI for community engagement platforms. Paul, do you have any information to update us on that?
Yes, I do. Renee, the Planning and Zoning Director, has been sort of heading up the committee to evaluate various platforms, and the committee met a few days ago and made a recommendation. So that isn't public yet. I'll just, the name of the company, but I'll just say that recommendation has been reached. So now it's a matter of figuring out what level of this product do we want to recommend to the city manager, come up with a strategy to fund it. But I think there's definitely a will there for staff of various departments. It's a real tool that I think can work very well for us with sustainability, along with other city functions, to get interaction with the public. So I will continue to keep you updated as we get this further along and hopefully approved.
Excellent, thank you. The next item is the Pinellas mitigation plan information, and Paul Robinson, you had sent that to Paul and Irene, and they sent it to us. So I'm gonna turn it over to you for that conversation. And you are muted.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
I'm lost. I don't know what we're talking about.
You had asked that the Pinellas mitigation questionnaire be sent to us as a committee. So that was sent out. And you,
Yes, I forwarded it to Paul and Irene.
and then it was forwarded out to us. So I thought that you had wanted a conversation about that.
I haven't seen anything come back, so I don't know.
What do you mean seen something come back? We couldn't respond to you. This is how.
I forwarded the mitigation survey to Paul and Irene.
And then they distributed it to us.
Right. I did it. Yes. But that's information. That's new information to me. I haven't gotten any feedback from it. So I'm not sure.
You're cutting out. I didn't hear. I missed what you were saying.
Yeah, I have received no feedback from the send out of the mitigation survey. So I don't understand what you are asking me for.
Well, we couldn't talk about it. We couldn't email you back or respond to it. This would be the opportunity to have a conversation about it. So I was just like giving space tonight if you wanted to talk about it with the group.
Well, it is an example of a community that we might incorporate portions of and use in community outreach. Mm-hmm. But each member of the committee obviously would have to review it and see what portions, what individual questions within that survey we think would be useful for us. I don't have the survey in front of me, and I'm not, there's been no feedback from the committee about what we think would be useful. So I'm not sure what more I can say about it. To me, as I reviewed it, it seemed like there was some good questions, some good thought-provoking questions, and it could be utilized in outreach, not just to get information, but also to educate the public. Do other members of the committee have an opinion about portions of that survey that we think are particularly useful for us?
I'm looking at it right now and I'm thinking like the flooding and the storm type stuff, just the open-ended, like any additional hazards that you might see as a threat, you know?
I think I did not know what the ask was when that came out, other than, to review it. And so I don't know, maybe could there be a directive from tonight with an action for all of us to move forward with that? Because I did not realize there was an ask that was associated with it.
Well, Karen, there may not have been an ask associated with it. It was simply to be forwarded to the committee as information, but also for us to think about, hey, what parts of this might we find useful in communicating with the community at large?
So I think that's actually, I think, what the ask is. So that's perfect. But I was not prepared to bring that to the table because I did not know that's what that, other than reviewing that's where we were going with it. So sorry about that. Like I said, I got it, I reviewed it, and then kind of put it on, I wouldn't say on the back burner, but I just put it to the side because I wasn't sure where we were going with it moving forward. So I guess now that we all have it, and thank you for providing that, where do we want to go with it? I guess is my question.
Perhaps we can review it, write questions, or see what would be useful and put it as an agenda item for next month so that we really can thoroughly explore it.
I think that sounds great. And I think that this is a good kind of learning opportunity for us as a group, that if we do have something that we want to share and have a conversation about, then when we send it on to Ashley or to Irene or to Paul, if we could tie an ask to it so that it makes it a little clearer. Because when we're trying to set the agenda, I want to be respectful and make sure that we put it on the agenda so that we're not missing something. But I wasn't terribly clear about what we were, I just wanted to, like I said, give space tonight for that conversation. But in the future, I think if you would like to bring something as a conversation for the group, then if we could just say that in the email so that we all have a better understanding of what to do with it. Or if it's just an FYI, then like we asked, Shannon Brewer to pass along information. And if it's going to be that, then just FYI, just so that so we're all aware. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, and I will take that to heart next time. Do you think we need to follow this brief conversation up with a specific ask to the committee again?
No, I think we've got it for tonight for this particular item. So we'll all take a look at that questionnaire and then be prepared to have a conversation about what you think would be useful to use from it, and maybe consider an application of when we would use it and how we would use it.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few comments that might be helpful when you all review this. What you're going to find is, I think what the county was doing was coming up with a couple of, I'll say, versions. So you're going to see 23 detailed questions, and then what looks like to be 2 summary questions at the end. And I suspect what they were doing is sending the 23 questions to one group and perhaps the 2 summary questions on a postcard or something like that. And those 2 summary questions are: what hazards are most common, are most concern to you? And then what should be the top goals of the local mitigation strategy? So just keep that in mind. Perhaps some of those questions get used in different ways when you evaluate that.
All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is an update of the University of Florida and IFAS Sea Grant Community Flood Risk Empowering Underserved Communities. That is the script that we have put together and sent out. And I just want to, before we get too far into this, remind everybody what we're trying to do with this. So we decided that we were going to reach out to community leaders, and we identified those community leaders, and we each have been assigned. We went through and kind of said, I'll talk to them, I'll talk to them. So that's what the intent of this is, to have some direction for those conversations. So when you call those community leaders and you're inviting them to participate in the information gathering sessions that are being led by IFAS and the Secret Project, it's just guidance of basically trying to explain to them what we're trying to do. So it's not that you have to take the script verbatim and read it to them. We just wanted to have similar enough talking points that we're all kind of singing from the same page. So I don't think we need to get bogged down in like details of, you know, exactly how you're going to say it. I think that what we really need to focus on is having this conversation sooner rather than later. And that's because if you, I'm going to share my screen really quick so that I can pull that up. Nope. There we go.
Yeah, I was thinking when we use the word script, it might be misleading. It's not meant to be a verbatim, just start reading when someone picks up the phone. I think that's an important point.
Right. It's mainly to give us confidence that we are all saying similar enough things so that people get the gist of it with a similar idea. And like I was saying, we need to be having these conversations sooner rather than later. And that's because there are going to be 3 different meetings times that are being offered. So remember, this is not the community at large listening sessions. These are just for the leaders that we're hoping will be kind of the water bearers of the sustainability message that we're trying to get them to encourage their community members that they engage with to come to the table. So there's going to be a meeting on October 7th at 7 p.m. or on October 8th at 3 p.m. or on Saturday, October 10th at 9:30 in the morning. And they don't need to attend all of those meetings. They would just need to attend one. If they want to attend more than one because they may feel like they missed something, they're certainly welcome to. But the idea is basically just to try to encourage them to participate and get them to come to one of those meetings using, you know, this explanation of what we're trying to get accomplished. So I guess I'll leave it there and see if there's any questions or comments about that.
Dory, are you trying to pull up the 3-page essay that says getting the community talking about sustainability?
Yeah, can you see it? Are you guys able to see it?
I've got it sitting on my desk, but I cannot, I'm looking at something else on your screen, which is the American Lung Association.
Yes.
Bizarre.
Okay.
Now can you see it?
And
Yeah.
this is the first time I've seen this. Was this sent out to everybody?
Yeah, it was.
It was in the same backup.
Ah, okay. And it's,
Are you guys seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Dory, I've got some problems with this. First of all, it's too long. If you want to convince somebody to pay attention to what you're telling them, even if you're reading it over the phone, you limit it to 1 page. Also, it says we are partnering with the University of Florida IFAS. We've talked about them, but in what way are we partnering with them?
So this, like I said, it's not for you to read verbatim. This is a backup for you to make sure that you have it clear in your head what we're asking the community leaders to do.
I understand it states that we're partnering with the University of Florida IFAS.
Correct.
Extension and Sea Grant. In what way are we partnering with them, and how is that actually a correct statement?
So I was answering the first question about the length. The second question I didn't get to yet, and that is how we're partnering with them. And we're partnering with them in that they are leading the conversation and helping us to pull the community into these conversations about sustainability. So that was what we had agreed upon a couple meetings ago, to use them as a liaison for gathering feedback from the community.
Maybe I don't remember that conversation as well as I'd like to, but I don't know that I agreed to, or that we as a committee agreed to having them lead us on how we interact with our own community. And I'm not sure that the partnering is the correct term here.
Let me add a little bit of that, if I may. The IFAS actually reached out to the city. They received a grant to engage communities, particularly underserved communities, to talk about how different impacts from climate are affecting these communities. And they asked if we wanted to participate with them. So this is not our only community outreach. This is rather sort of a very efficient way to get an early start with this segment of our plan. So that's why the word partner in, they're the ones paying for it. And we're just, I think, fortunate enough to be one of the cities that they want to focus on to help communicate.
If their focus, Paul, is on underserved communities, that's great. We all know that underserved communities can be disproportionately affected by some aspects of climate change. Rich people can pick up and move sticks and stakes, and poor people can't do that. But if we're talking about using this to go out to the community in Tarpon Springs, to our prospective champions, it isn't going to sell. I mean, it might sell if we're talking to the Shepherd Center. It might sell if we're talking to a minister who takes care of the poor, but it isn't going to sell to the Merchants Association. It isn't going to sell to the Chamber of Commerce. It's not going to sell to the Rotary Club. And I think it would be a mistake if what we use as our background information to communicate with our champions varies from group to group. I think it should be uniform. I would eliminate the third paragraph and not use it for our group and for our champions. And when we get down to other places in this, on page 2, where under the rubric in blue, more points of information as conversation dictates, resilience answers the question, do we have a community where everyone has access to the systems and resources, etc.? Well, first of all, that's not grammatical. Secondly, it's illogical. And thirdly, it's counterproductive for us. We're redefining resilience and sustainability for the umpteenth time. We've been doing it for a year. And these, are a credit to any organization that wants to talk to the poor, to underserved or less served parts of the community. But for the rest of our community, that first of all, it won't sell across the board. And it's taking us backward in time, redefining terms that we've been defining for a long time already. I think that, let me go on. Let me talk a little bit more about this. If we want points of information to sell to our champions, to our various groups within our community, the best thing we could use as backup information is the introduction to the sustainability plan that we as a group have written in draft form.
That's so I kind of, when I look at this IFAS, just this page that we're looking at right now, I didn't even mention the whole Sea Grant thing when I reached out to somebody at SPC, because I emailed them before the last meeting, and I wasn't thinking about the IFAS thing. I'm thinking like maybe we can just mention, I did mention that we're working on the plan and we wanted community input. So maybe if you're thinking you're talking to somebody that you don't think it'll sell, maybe, mention all of our stuff first and then include this in there. And if you think it will sell, we can invite them to these meetings and see if they want to give, the IFAS and us some input as well.
Taylor, I'm going to repeat what I said. I think that whatever we use as our standard that we decide on now needs to be uniform across the community. If we want to have backup different information down the road, yeah, then we could vary what we say to representatives of the homeless community or representatives of the African American community or representatives of the Shepherd Center or et cetera, things that I haven't thought of. But I think what we use as our standard from the get-go needs to be uniform across the community. And I don't think this is it at all. It has merit. I like it. But as our standard to begin with, no.
So I'm trying to find on the city's website where we have, and we agreed to definitions of resilience and sustainability so that we can just change that out. But like I said, I don't know that we need to I think we do need to include the IFAS because they're the ones that are helping us to coordinate this outreach. And that's like, we need to make sure that everybody understands that that's what's happening.
I think we need to back up then and find out a great deal more about IFAS and what their push is, what their ideals and their plans are, and decide whether they are, whether we really want to be partnered with them in terms of outreach for our whole community.
Well, the city partners with IFAS all the time. Like they were mentioning earlier in the evening, they help the arborists partner with the city to get the message out about what is happening with the work that the arborist is doing. It's the University of Florida. I mean, it's not like some organization that isn't already working with all of the cities across our communities.
That's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with the way this is written as our starting point for engaging with our community.
Does anybody else? I'm kind of at a loss because we talked about this multiple times in other meetings. So I'm confused as to why.
Maybe it would be helpful to back up a step. I'd like to back up a step and let's just talk about exactly what this is. There may be a fundamental misunderstanding of what this is. This document is intended to be an invitation to participate in some listening sessions. It's really not us telling them what to think. It's inviting them to participate as the champions in some sessions to hear from them. So really, it's meant to just frame what we're going to be talking about and listening about. So I'm trying to salvage this thing here. If we need to cut back the background because that's not looking good and get back to just the invitation, reaching out the hand to say we've got some listening sessions coming up on October 7th, 8th, and 10th. We've identified you as an important part of our community. We really would like to hear from you and have you participate. Dory, can you bring that back up again, that 3-page document? And is there something in the very beginning that, because really all the stuff in blue is totally negotiable. The last page and a half is about if someone wants to know more. And if we want to just paste in our introduction there instead, or a link to our website, our sustainability page, that's easy to do.
I think that perhaps what, Paul, the direction that you're going, Paul Smith and Paul Robinson, both of you guys, is that to take it, streamline it a little bit to where it's just says, you know, we're partnering with this organization because we want to know more about our community. We think you're an important voice. We'd like to hear from you. Here are some opportunities if you choose to meet with us. And then just make it bing, bing, bing. Because if we have the 3 opportunities there as well, that should be very concise to where we can pretty much send someone this. We'll have the conversation with them individually, but this will be something that they can pull up to agree to go to one of those Zoom meetings. And you know, I think it could be streamlined a little bit because it's kind of a long way around to get into where we're trying to get with them. You know, it's the simpler we can make our request, I think, and you know, the simpler we can make our framework. It's not a complicated thing. We're trying to engage the community to know how climate change is going to affect especially underserved communities. And we thought that, you know, they've been around town a long time. They, you know, work with different communities, and we're looking for to have a conversation basically and share their wisdom.
I agree with what Paul Smith said, and I agree with what Robin just said. I think this can be streamlined to one page. There are some things I think that obviously should not be included as information shared with our champions across the board. So I think we can use parts of this. I think we can streamline it to one page. After hearing what Dory has said, I would like to know what the context and content of the 3 listening sessions is intended to be. I think we need to know a great deal more about what are those are intended to do, the format, etc., before we invite our champions to engage in them.
The intent of the listening session is to get their feel, but not to speak for their community, but to just try to understand what are the values that they are. It's like what Shannon was mentioning, like what are you have to know what the community values in order to make a plan. And that's the intent, I think, is to capture their feeling on what the people that they engage with value about the city.
I got it. Let's go back to a conversation we had 2 months ago. Engaging with communities is great if you do it in a structured fashion. If you don't do it in a structured fashion, you're going to waste your time. So, what information are we going to provide to our champions so that they know what we want them to focus on these listening sessions? And are we going to be listening? Who's going to be listening?
Yes, every one of us can participate.
A format to these listening sessions. Again, I think we have to structure these properly, or we'll get information all over the map that we won't be able to collate and use.
If it's helpful, Dory, we got an email from the IFAS with some suggested questions at the listening session. I can bring those up on my screen and we
That's
can
what I was looking for as I was talking, and I'm not good at talking and looking for something at the same time. So if you have it handy, and
Yeah.
then
At this
please
point,
share
it's three open-ended questions that he's put out as a starting point. Let me do that.
Paul, while you're looking for that, I'm wondering, is there going to be I think what Dr. Robinson's mentioning is some type of facilitator to move this along to where we can get the information that we want. Do we have a facilitator in mind? And is that something that we might want someone to kind of commit to doing these 3 and facilitating? Someone who's a adept facilitator with community meetings.
Can you all still hear me? My screen's got shrunk with the share screen.
Yes.
Okay. Now, my thought was that the IFAS representatives would be taking the lead and facilitating, and we as the city would be participating. Is that your understanding as well, Dory?
Yes. And one of them is Spanish speaking, and that's part of having them facilitate would be useful.
Is the focus of IFAS in this context underserved communities?
That is a primary interest of theirs, yes.
Well, it's not a primary interest of this committee's. So how did we lose control of the situation and turn it over to a different organization?
Did not turn, no. This is just part of a community engagement strategy. This is not our only community engagement strategy. But
you're proposing it as the first interaction other than a phone call with our champions.
So the questions that they're asking for the listening session are on the screen here. And these are all very much in alignment with what we're trying to know about what the community is feeling to help guide the sustainability action plan. So what do you value about the community of Tarpon Springs? Very open-ended, and will help to explore and understand what we would want to include in the sustainability action plan in terms of focus areas. I think that we need to have that open-endedness to it so that we can help guide our conversations and our plan. And then what concerns do you have your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors have living in Tarpon Springs? So barriers and opportunities. And then what type of efforts should the city prioritize to meet needs in the future? Those are very open-ended questions that will help us understand what people think sustainability is, and help us to understand what people think that they need the city to focus on. And the idea is that the optional question is if participants need some prompting, if they can't think of what types of efforts the city should prioritize, to be able to give some ideas like public health, quality of life, all of the things that we addressed in our presentation to the BOC, so that we can see, are people concerned about flooding? Are they concerned about emergency response, quality of life, those kind of topics that we had as reasons why we need sustainability?
Well, let me focus on one. What are the top 3 things the city is doing well for residents, for example, in public health? There are 1,000 answers to that question, and 999 of them have nothing to do with climate change or sustainability. This is not structured enough to get the kind of information back from our champions that we need to move forward. This is going to take a lot of work before we are in a position to have a listening session.
Well, keep in mind, this isn't a listening session for the community. This is a listening session only for the community leaders, so that we can then build more communication with the community based on what leaders are, what they're perceived as needs of the community. So this isn't this isn't the whole plan of engaging with the community at large. This is try to get feedback from community leaders that have the pulse on the community of what they think is of concern, or even what is going well, and what can be continued to be built upon for the city.
Well, of course, but it's not enough to subserve the needs of the sustainability committee.
Can I interject for a second? My question would be, if we were to reach out to the respective people that we've become responsible for reaching out to, and explained to them, that we have a sustainability committee, because again, we're just assuming everybody in Tarpon Springs know that we exist as a committee. and explain to them that there's a listening session where we're reaching out to these people. There's, because there are leaders in their community and they're important and their community's input is important. And then it was to be followed up of these questions so that when they come to the listening session, they're prepared to give feedback. And again, it can be, you know, to Dr. Robinson's point, it can be generic in that it reaches all communities and not just focusing on the minority communities. Just because IFAS is directing that way, they're not directing these questions to those communities specifically. These questions are very generic and would work in every single community. So if we reached out to our respective community leaders and explained that there is a, you know, the sustainability committee, we're trying to engage their help initially in understanding what they perceive their community's needs are. And then we have an ask for them that in the future, we will come back to them and ask them to engage with their community and report back to us. I mean, I think that, I don't know if that streamlines it any better or any differently.
Well, I think that that's helpful, Karen, but I'm also thinking that, you know, when you're looking and this also ties in with what Shannon said and what some of you guys have said too, we're looking to see what the community cares about, what the community is concerned about, what the community cares about, but balance that. In other words, if we look at it, and we can also help guide this as well, but look at it through what our assets are rather than just look at it from what our needs are. I think that completely changes the conversation, and it can be focused, it can be very balanced as far as what are our assets. Let's look at it from our what we have going on here that we can build on, rather than, you know, there's people without houses and there's people, because we know what needs are, but the lens that we ask these questions through is also important. So I like that balance of saying, what is the culture of our city? What does our community care about? Because that's very valuable to our work, so that we'll know as we move forward with our plan that there's this the support, this cadre of people who are concerned, who are more engaged with us, and even for the purpose of connecting to the sustainability committee and knowing what we're working on, that they have a part to play in it. I think that's very valuable.
Robin, could you be more specific about assets?
Well, you know, resilience is about it's looking at our internal and external assets and what we can build on to create after misfortune, either personal, societal, community, nature, weather, whatever, how we can rebuild from that and how we can regroup from that as a community. And I think by seeing what the assets are when people look at that, and those questions are in there too. What do you value about the community of Tarpon Springs? Focus on opportunities that are here as well. The fact that we have a public health department here, we have a hospital here, we have a community health center here that's now going to have a dental clinic as well. So we're very asset rich community. I think this is just us trying to strive to figure out a way to hear the voices of the community and better understand what their viewpoint is, what their point of view is, and the lens that they're seeing things through, and how that intersects with the work that we're doing as a committee. I think that community health, community resilience, all those things are completely intertwined, as are the infrastructure and everything else, as we talked about. So this is like taking a little piece of it and addressing it. It's not the whole picture. It's not everything we need to know. It's a little piece of it, but let's get something going here. I think it's important for us to move in a direction that we can start seeing where we are. If this isn't working, it's not like we're developing our sustainability action plan around these 3 meetings. This is for us to be a fly on the wall, but also to see and listen to what community leaders are thinking. I think that's important. It's like having extra eyes and brains and everything else at the table with us.
Well, everything you said is true. However, if I take something as undefined as this to my prospective champions, I will lose them. These people are busy. And if we want to talk about sustainability and the resilience of this city that is going to have to dramatically upgrade itself in the next decade, we're going to need to present not just my champions, but everybody else's champions with some specificity of what we want to engage with them on and how we move forward with their portions of the community. We're nowhere near ready to have a listening session on this.
I would respectfully disagree. I think that we need to start somewhere. I think this is the place where we need to start. I think, to Robin's point, we need to be hearing what the community values and what they're thinking to help guide our work. And I think that we all agreed at the beginning that we wanted to have the community's engagement to be able to guide this work. And I think that this is a great way to start doing that and to collect feedback on what our community members value about our community. So I am proposing that we go ahead and move forward with this. We need to, like, the dates are coming soon, so we need to tighten this up, and we don't have time to do it this evening as a group. So I think that we will have to just agree right now on shortening it and putting in the definitions of resilience sustainability from the page on the website, or taking it from the PowerPoint, and have no problem shortening it, taking out the picture. It was all just trying to have additional information so that people have kind of a background of what sustainability is. But I don't think that they need to have every detail or every aspect of what a plan might include to try to get this initial feedback from what the community values. So we're going to need to be able to reach out to community leaders within the next week or so in order to be able to move forward with this early October timeline. Because every month that we don't move on it, we're losing time. And I would really like to be able to start to get some community feedback at this point.
Can I ask something maybe a little unconventional? Assume I'm a community leader and you're reaching out to me. How would you phrase what you're trying to get across so I could understand? And maybe that will help us as we try to do this. My feeling on this is, I appreciate the background that came from that email that we got reaching out to the community. I do still think it needs to be followed up with some sort of an email, because there's no way I can tell somebody in a very short sentence to go to on this date to HTTPS. They need the web address to like that. Could you kind of assume one of us is a prospective leader in the community or a leader in the community, and how you might approach that phone call?
Yes, so that's I would reach out and explain that we have a sustainability committee and that we are trying to engage the community to create a sustainability action plan. And what we're doing is reaching out to community leaders like yourself, so that we can get your thoughts on what the people that you engage with value about our community to help guide that plan. So we've got these 3 different listening sessions. If you could please attend one of them, we would very much appreciate hearing what you value about the community.
That, I think when we went back, when we first started and were, I'll put these in air quotes because I don't have video on, looking for a script. That, I think you just summed up exactly in a very brief way how we can approach our community leaders without the extraneous variables. The email that came out, the portion that came out gives us personally a lot of background information to speak to should there be a question or what have you. But what you just said was very succinct, and it got to the point. You threw your ask in there. This is what we're asking for you to do. Please be a part of this if you can. You can come to any one of the 3 sessions. Please be a part of it because your perspective on the communities that you're involved with are really important for us. So that was perfect. That's what I was looking for, Dory, was when I get on that phone, what is, and to Paul's credit, the other one, absolutely, that's way too long, but we're not reading that script itself. So what you did, just sum that up for me. I feel very comfortable creating something very similar to what you just said, Dory, and posing that to the community leaders as an explanation.
Agreed.
Perfect. Yeah, the intent was just to give everyone on this committee enough of the background to feel comfortable making a phone call. But I'm glad that short and sweet explanation, that's how I intend to approach it, is just, but like I always like to feel like I have enough in my back pocket that I could keep going if there are questions. So that was why we provided all of that additional information.
We might have been able to clarify had you literally just written that at the end of this as here's my example. The rest is just background for you to be able to provide answers to the community, or so that you have a really good understanding of what's happening. But like I said, that I personally, I have absolutely no problem reaching out to the community leaders, and as a committee do not know what our community is looking for, or what they value and what have you. And each of these pockets may have a better approach. And then obviously we have our second ask after that is having them engage and being those community leaders in engaging their community in that realm.
So this page is basically all the background we would need just in case they ask more questions, and then the script would pretty much be that ask, that short and sweet thing that Dory just mentioned. I mean, we could even go back in the YouTube video that I'm watching right now and get it word for word and write it up if we wanted to.
Yes, and thank you, Karen, for pointing out to me that I was not being clear in in the wording of the word script. So I apologize to the group for not being real clear with what we were asking you to ask them.
So again, can we get a second simple version? Exactly what Taylor was suggesting, going back and just making it the short and sweet version. And then we'll have this in our back pocket.
I'll ask Dory if she would type up what she recalls what she said, and I can match it up with the YouTube and send it out to everybody.
Excellent. Okay. We are really low on time. We've got 10 minutes. So very quickly, I'm just going to throw it out there and maybe move it forward as an item for the next agenda. But I would like to have a conversation about how we can tie events that are already on the city's calendar and how we can partner to maybe do some community outreach through those events. For example, the Touch a Truck or Earth Day. The city has an Earth Day event, being able to engage with the community that way. So I'd like to be able to try to put some stuff on the calendar, even if knowing that we may not have in-person events even into the beginning of next year. But I just think it would be good for us to have that conversation of how and brainstorm of what the city's already got so that we can mash up instead of trying to create new events, but ways to engage the community through events that are already on the city's calendar. So let's go ahead and just table that there if you don't mind. And then we can put it on as an item for the next agenda. So moving on to item number 5, items for the next agenda. We will have a presentation from Building Development Director Kevin Powell. I'm assuming he wasn't able to make it tonight, but it was great that Shannon Brewer was able to step in and have that presentation in his place. So is that something that's feasible?
I'm going to make that request. He's on a long-term assignment, so I'll just need to find out when he's back, but
Okay.
I'll let
Or
you know.
if not, is there another department that we had lined up that would be good to have a presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the group if there's something on your mind that you want to hear from a particular department. I can certainly begin trying to make those arrangements.
Paul, there is something that would be useful, I think, to this whole committee, and that is to know the number of days a year when the mean high water or the mean high water exceeds the height of the street. Along Dodecanese, and let's just throw out 2 places, along Dodecanese and along South Spring plus Whitcomb Boulevard. If there is a department head who can speak to those questions, I think that would be helpful. It might lead to other questions.
Okay, I'll begin looking into finding that information out.
I think it might be helpful to have a presentation about the like budget and capital improvement projects and how that cycle works so that we can understand like how far into the future we need to be looking at some of the maybe bigger ticket items, or like looking at, I know that was a Commissioner Carr, I think, wanted us to give some recommendations for those kind of big ticket items. So maybe having a better understanding from the finance department how that works, that would be useful to me. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. And also maybe just like the budget and how, when, if we're looking at items, when that needs to be brought into the conversation. Any other recommendations? Okay, then.
Have we, oh, sorry. Have we heard from the Parks Department yet? Like Parks and Recreation? I'm not sure.
When Tom Funchen spoke last time with Public Works, he does have the Parks Department, so we did hear from him. Recreation has more to do with programming and that sort of thing.
All right.
Okay, so items to the next agenda. So we'll hopefully have a presentation from one of the departments And then I would like to continue on with the discussion of community engagement. Any other items that you guys would like to have on the next agenda?
Yeah, maybe some talking points to how the listening sessions went.
Mhm.
Okay.
And on that note, I'm sorry, Dory, because this is pulling away from the topic. I'm running with squirrels here. Did we need to make a motion for that last comment on using a script? Because as soon as we hang up from tonight, the assumption is we're going ahead with whatever script comes out to address our community leaders, or do we need to make an emotion that we are reaching out to the community leaders and moving forward? I just don't know the proper channel for that. So if you speak to that.
Karen's correct in that it would be appropriate to put this to a vote and a discussion.
I'm going to actually ask Irene, is that your understanding of what procedurally would need to happen?
That would be up to the board. You could either do it through a vote or through a consensus.
Okay, then I would like to go ahead and do it via consensus. Are we in agreement that we will take the talking points and reach out to community leaders?
We should not reach out to community leaders until we have restructured these talking points and have an opportunity to discuss them as a committee.
That's going to be into the next meeting and we won't have time to do that. We won't have time to discuss it again as a committee.
We need to do it somehow, Dory. This is not settled.
Okay, then let's go ahead and take it. Let's take it for a vote then. Can I get a motion of how to proceed with the reaching out to community leaders?
I'll make a motion that if we can get verbatim what Dory said earlier, and if we have a script, I make a motion that we reach out with that script to community leaders so they understand that there are listening sessions for them to participate in.
I'll second it.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Gallagher? Mrs. Gallagher?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
No, that's okay. Mr. Mandalou?
Yes.
Mrs. Menino?
Yes.
Vice Chair Robinson?
No.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Chair Larson?
Okay, so I will get those talking points out tomorrow morning and then we will be reaching out to community leaders and putting the wrap up of the listening sessions on the agenda for the October meeting as well. Are there other items that we would like to have on October's agenda?
There's something else that I would have brought up, but perhaps this is a good time. We've put writing the sustainability plan on hold while we engage in community outreach. And the longer we spend not finalizing our draft versions of, for example, the introduction, the further our memory gets from what we wrote and what our intentions were. I think we should go at the same time as a committee. I think we should be continuing our writing of the sustainability plan at the same time that we're doing community outreach. If you think about it, any community group, any committee or citizens group can engage in community outreach. We are the only body in this community, in this city, that is tasked with writing a sustainability action plan. And I think we can do both at the same time, and we should be. And I'll repeat what I said about the information to share with our champions. I think that sharing the information in our introduction, I'll use as an example the financial information that Karen shared with us, which is so thorough and so powerful, would be a better body of information, just as one example, to share with our champions going forward than the definition of sustainability, resiliency, et cetera. I think we should do both. And maybe have that on the agenda next time, you know, whatever you think.
Yeah, I think that you make a good point, and I do think that Paul Smith, if we could also add to the agenda, then as I think you were going to tighten up all of the wording that we sent for the intro. If we could maybe have that as an agenda item for the next October meeting, I think that would be good too, so that we can have that as a point. And I think, Paul Robinson, to your point, I think that there's value in sharing that PowerPoint with the community leaders as well. And I don't think that those listening sessions would preclude that at all. But I do think that I think we can do both, like give them the information and make sure that they have access to that as well.
I think, Dory, the script and Dr. Robinson, I think the script, and again, air quotes, the script that Dory's putting out provides kind of the structure for that, but the introduction to our sustainability action plan and the fact that we have one coming up and things like that, that's great background information, like additional information as well, to add to when you are reaching out to those community leaders. So when I said I would like verbatim what Dory said, it really was like, that was so concise, but obviously, you know, you and I are going to speak a little differently to the, you know, to some of the leaders that have questions for us or things like that. So to your point, I think that's a great way to kind of bring some of that other information in, whether it's, you know, hey, you know, financially, this is the impact it has and things like that. So my talking points, my 2 cents.
Thank you. I think that that's great. Okay. Anything else for the next agenda?
I just have a quick question on the introduction and how far it is away from being something, you know, what we've already done to have in printable form when we're talking to our community champions. Is it so far away that it would take till the next meeting, or is there something that I could have in my hands as I'm having conversations?
I think there's still some editorial decision making that needs to be made. So I think that it's a little bit further away than, yeah, accepting, you know, what do they call that? Accept all changes and move ahead. But I will work to keep that moving and get you something, but it won't be before the listening sessions, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay. And I do have one more question, because I, you know, for some reason, and I apologize that I wasn't ready with all of the handouts, but I couldn't see them on my computer. I could see them on my phone, and I sent them to my husband and he printed it. But this item that was originally getting the community talking about sustainability. Dory, was that something that you worked on by yourself?
Yeah, I pretty much put that together with some feedback from Paul as well, from Paul Smith. So
can I ask that in the future, as if you collaborate together on something like this, that we could more in advance? I mean, I don't know how recently you did it, but it must have been fairly recently that we didn't get it sent out until we got the agenda and backup. But if there was a little bit more time in advance, we might have had some opportunity to say that it needed to be kind of simplified, you know, and we wouldn't have probably spent so much time talking about that tonight. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Yep. You make a good point. Yep.
Let me reinforce what Denise just said. I think if we had had time and been encouraged to respond to this, getting the community talking, if we had been encouraged and given the opportunity to respond to this in writing before the meeting, then the points of view that we've all made would be more clear, and the time we'd spent on it would have been less.
Point taken.
I agree.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we don't have anything else for the next agenda, then let's go on to public comments. Are there any public comments?
We do not have any public in attendance at this time. I'm sorry. Actually, we do. If anyone would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in to talk. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay, moving on to staff comments, please.
I just have a quick comment / update. I'll be brief. So I'm still working on ICLEI for our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. I did send out the first template to the wastewater treatment plant, and I am currently awaiting the data from them. So we have gotten that started, and I just want to let you guys know that.
Awesome. Are we putting like a deadline or an anticipated date so that we know like when?
I did not give them a deadline, no. I definitely can. I was thinking about that actually today. So I will talk to Paul a little bit more about that and see where we can go as far as deadlines.
Yeah, I can say that our staff just came out of a very intensive budgeting process, and they're getting back to their other things and getting ready for the new budget year. So we're going to need to be sensitive to their workload. We are working with one of our own divisions in our department first as sort of a test to see how efficient our communication and requests are and make changes to that, so that we're very aware that what we're asking of other staff is representing their time. So we want to respect that. We'll have a better idea of deadline once we get through this first part.
All right. Any other staff comments?
None more for me, thank you.
All right. Let's switch it over to committee comments.
Just one on the, I'm going to go back to, and this is Dory, because you by mistake, you put up a different email. The draft on that, I was kind of like flipping through, like, we'd like to invite you. I still think that there needs to be a little bit of follow-up to our phone conversation. Should that be via email to give them the links that they have to go to for the listening sessions? What would be your thoughts on the approach to get that information to the contacts?
Yeah, I think that it would be good to email them the dates and the times with those Zoom links so that they can just click right on it and register.
Okay, so just in follow-up to our conversation, here's the information for you. Perfect. Yep. Thanks.
And everybody has the list of and understands who they're reaching out to, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Any other committee comments?
Just one quick one. Don't forget to invite people to our meetings too. That way, they can see what we do and make a comment at the end if they need to.
Absolutely. Then quickly, I will just follow back with David Keys, who had reached out via email. I did reach out via phone, and we played phone tag, and still waiting for him to call me back. So that's where we left that. Also, I noticed on the sustainability page for the city, the PowerPoint that was given to the BOC is not on the page. And I think that that would be helpful to have it there so that as another resource, even when we're talking with community leaders, if we want to reference that as a resource for them to look at, it's not on the city's webpage on our sustainability subpage. So if we could have that added, I think that would be really useful and helpful to have that PowerPoint. And then the last thing, I know we're 10 minutes over, but the American Lung Association published a report that talks about the importance of quickly electrifying our transportation sector and the very serious health impacts to the transportation system has on human health. And so I'm gonna ask that report be sent out to you all. And if you would please take a look at it. And if we could add that to the documents that we're using for as resources, I think that's a useful report. And I don't know that we necessarily need to have a conversation about it next week, but if everyone could take a look at it just so that they have it in their memory bank, so that when we start talking about focus areas that we have that as a resource. And I think that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else they would like to add before we adjourn? All right, well then, thank you all. We'll go ahead and call this meeting adjourned at 8:12 p.m. Look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.